Good adventures, everybody. I want to welcome you to episode 99 of Books Cubed. And today I have got Shelly Snow Pordea, and we're going to talk time travel, which is one of my favorite subjects. She's a writer, not a time traveler, I don't think. Maybe she can't tell us if she is. So welcome, Shelly.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I'm going to read her bio. Shelly Snow Pordea is a story coach, ghostwriter, and the author of the Tracing Time trilogy, a story which spans 3 generations of women who find their way in the world while seeking to save themselves and those they love, which is very exciting. And I like that it's a timely message for the planet. It's good stuff. It's a love story. It's time travel. It's all kinds of good stuff. So I know you've got, you write children's stories also.
Well,
Right.
I published my first children's book. I say my first because hopefully I'll get to do it again, but it was just a COVID project that, I was just inspired by not being able to see the people I love. So I wrote a little story to help parents and families kind of cope with the strange practice of social distancing and, just embrace, the time period we're in. Being able to show how to love in so many different ways is important.
Oh, I like that. I like that because we've all been so isolated,
Yeah.
and it affects some people more than others. Now, for some of us,
Mhm.
we're like really excited to not have to go outside, but there's a lot of people that really want to be out there in the world, and I
Mhm.
think that's a great idea. The book is The Hug Who Had No Arms. Let's first talk about the time travel, though. So, what brought you to time travel?
I was always obsessed with it. I really credit my 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Michaels, if she's out there somewhere, with just kind of fostering this desire to write in me. And I wrote my first creative writing project in 6th grade, and it was a time travel story. And then it wasn't until my dad's sudden death 10 years ago in July that I had a dream, and I just picked up this story of, like, you have that sense when you lose somebody close, and especially it was suddenly, and it was an accident. And so no one expected it. We always expect our parents to have this really long life. And when that happened, I always had this sense of, like, oh, if I could just go back and, like, see him again, or so that sense of longing was on my heart. And it was just kind of a natural process to go ahead and, work through my emotions by writing.
Oh, I like that. I'm sorry about your dad. But
Thank
you know what? It kind of
you.
comes through in her longing to find her husband.
Yeah. It's funny
Yeah. So
because I didn't write it right away. I had that dream, and then I was, like, almost paranoid. Like, I was superstitious that someone else would actually die if I wrote this story. But yeah, like I said, it was just more of, like, this sense of what would you do, like, if the closest person to you on the planet was no longer around. So
that would be hard. So give everybody, oh, I'm sorry, knocking things around.
no
Give
worries.
everybody just a brief rundown of what this book is about.
Yeah, so it's basically just about a woman's journey of kind of losing herself in her relationship with her husband and children, and, living overseas. And then once that was taken away, when her husband disappears, she basically refused to believe that he was dead, like everyone was telling her, and then just desperately trying to get everything back the way that it was, and going to great lengths and following him basically in his time travel studies, and trying to, get back into his world so that she could bring him back into hers.
You have 3 books in the series, and it
I
follows
do.
the generations.
It does. Yeah. So the second book is actually, it picks up with the little girl, Maggie, who is in the first story as a very young child. And then in the second book, it picks up with her 14 years later, because both of her parents essentially disappear since Anna chooses to go and look for her husband. So they essentially both disappear in time, and then they do kind of reunite in time. So the first half of the book is told by Maggie, the daughter, and then the second half is told by Anna again. It picks up again with Anna, when they kind of, like, blend into the meeting in time there. And then book 3 is actually told by the granddaughter. Mostly it's Maggie again, starts with Maggie, and then it goes into the granddaughter of Maisie. So
Will this continue to a book 4, or does the story conclude?
no, it basically concludes. I tried to tie it up pretty well. I have some reviews online that said I did, so that's enough for me. So hopefully that like brings the story. And it's interesting because, like I said, I was dealing with my father's death when I first started writing. My second book, I was in this period of my daughter becoming a teenager, and then the third book was my daughter got engaged, and I was like dealing with all these feelings of posterity and, oh my gosh, what happens with the next generation? I'm not a grandmother, but I just kind of, it's very much one of those like emotional states. You can kind of see it through the trajectory of how I envision, generationally the posterity of myself and my family, I guess.
You talked about writing in 6th grade.
Yeah.
Was writing something that you thought about as a career?
Never. No, I didn't. I spent about 10 years as a teacher. I lived overseas, which, I get a lot of my story from my own experience, being, living in Europe for 15 years. I drew a lot from that experience with Anna living in Mongolia. The setting is there in Mongolia, which is, I just chose a different place so people wouldn't be like, I'm, just writing about my own life, So, but I did live in the mountains. And so, I put them in a setting that was, glaciers and large mountains and ice caps and all those things. But yeah, I worked as an international teacher at an international school, actually, an English teacher at an international school there. So, I mean, writing was never far off. I did actually teach creative writing classes. I taught English grammar. Yeah, it was always very much the language of my soul. I wrestle with words all the time to try to convey the innermost feelings. And I find it fascinating because I always feel as a writer that I never quite get there.
Are you working on a new series yet?
I am not working on a new series yet. I'm actually working on a memoir. Yeah, my background is a little, unique, I would say. I grew up in a cult. And so, yeah, the experiences that I had there kind of inform the work that I'm doing now. Especially I spend a lot of my time doing some advocacy work, and yeah, that's kind of my heart at this moment. I am working with my brother on a screenplay, again, just to kind of paint a fictionalized story of what it's like to grow up in a cult. So those are my endeavors writing wise, just for my own personal projects right now. But I have a series in the back of my head that I'll eventually do another one.
For the cult, did you leave on your own, or
Oh
did
gosh,
you
yes.
have to?
Kind of a long story. My brother actually ran away when he was 17. And so that kind of threw me into this trajectory of, I just have to keep the peace. I won't make anybody mad. I ended up going to the cult college. So it wasn't until I moved to Europe that I kind of broke away. There's, no ties. Even though I did meet my husband in the college, he's from Europe. And so he was like not associated with it. And he's like, this is weird, I'm out. Um, but we ended up getting married and I moved overseas. And so that clean break, I think, was really what I needed for my mind just to be blown about like how the actual world operates and lives, and, how many things I can learn
Yeah. Was it isolating?
inside the cult.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, even my experience, if I think that you'll read into it in the novel, that everything was isolating for me. You know what I mean? Like I would list, so if you know anything really about like how they teach to identify what cults are, one of the major things is training people to self-regulate as far as my rules. Those rules that were there, that they were imposed upon me, became my own rules. So my own way of thinking, my own thoughts. That's, people balk at the word brainwashing. So I know that a lot of, I won't use that if it's offensive to people, but like that's essentially what you do. You regulate yourself to believe all these things. So it was a lot of unpacking Isolation for sure. Growing up, we rarely did any activity outside of the church. But as far as, moving overseas and like not speaking the language yet and having to learn that, and that was isolating in and of itself, and not knowing the culture yet, and that was isolating. And then, like I said, just understanding that I had freedom of thought, that was a years long process for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. And so the novel is a fictionalized account, but based on things that happened to you and your family.
I mean, the novel that I wrote, like the series that I have, I think I inject a lot of the emotions that I had, but not necessarily like there's nothing factual about the actual story.
Yeah.
I mean, unless I am a time traveler and I can't tell you.
Yeah. I like that.
It's the
I
first
like
rule,
that.
right?
Well, the series is well received on Amazon. Are
Yeah.
you wide? Are you other places besides Amazon?
Yeah, absolutely. It's registered with Ingram Sparks, and so it's like available pretty much anywhere you find books.
Yeah, I know the big thing is that, and they tell all new writers this, don't read your reviews.
Oh yeah.
And I know when I was a new writer, my first book, I of course read all of my reviews, and it actually, one of them helped me. They talked about she doesn't like she didn't like one of the characters, one of the characters in the book. So he'd been her arch nemesis for 10 years. And the review said, well, the reason why, when it's finally revealed, the reason was so lame. And it really made me laugh because it wasn't lame. If you've had issues with anybody in your life, sometimes we have the stupidest reasons why we dislike someone.
Mhm.
So I thought this isn't lame, but I love that she said it was lame. So in the next book, I wrote it in. There's a kid, so she explains to someone why she's hated this person for 10 years, and they tell her, that is so
That's
lame. That is so
lame.
lame. And then she
Oh,
gets
I
mad at that
love
person.
it.
So for that, I thought it worked great, but I try not to look at them.
Hmm.
Are you able to keep your eyes
Yeah.
off of your reviews, or do you?
So yeah, I don't like intentionally set up a time to go and look at them or anything, but every once in a while, yeah, I'll just be curious. Or if I'm like pursuing more reviews and asking people who I know have bought the book and read it to go ahead and review it, that kind of thing. So that's, the time that I will go in. And actually, I find it helpful, to be honest. I remember when I got my first 1-star review, and at first I was like, oh my gosh, I have a 1-star review, and I didn't read it. And then I went back and I read it. And it was so interesting. I was excited because I'm like, oh my gosh, this person I don't know at all bought my book. And the thing that they didn't like about it is I have mysticism, and they are of a camp of like this highly scientific, interstellar type science fiction time travel thing. And they don't like the fact that I wove some mysticism into it. And then one of my other like lower star, it wasn't a 1-star, but lower star reviews says that it was a little too scientific for them. So, it just made me realize I don't like, my story isn't for everybody, and that's okay. Like, I'm looking for the people that it resonates with, and if they enjoy it, that's fine. And I mean, it was nice because the person who gave me the worst review actually complimented my writing style. They just didn't like the fact that, I brought a spirit guide into the story. So
That's so interesting that one person didn't like that there wasn't science, and one person didn't
yeah,
like that. Yeah. So, you're right. You can't please everybody. I
yeah.
know someone, I can't remember where I read it, but they wrote about ghosts, and they had a reviewer actually say, that's not how ghosts behave.
I know, right? It's like, yeah, it's just a story. And that's the thing. Like, I have to hold it very loosely. Elizabeth Gilbert says in her book, Big Magic, that once you release a story, it is no longer your own. Because she gave this uh, like example when she was out on book tour for Eat, Pray, Love, and a woman came up and told her like that she had saved her life. When she got to the part of the story where she decided to leave her abusive husband, it gave her the strength to leave her own abusive husband.
Wow.
And Elizabeth Gilbert just thanked her and said whatever, but she's like, I never once called, acclaimed that my husband was abusive. He never laid a hand on me. I was just in a relationship that I could no longer mentally support. And so I decided to leave. But that story became her story, and that's okay. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's such a great, example of how we don't own it, right? It is what it is to the other person. That's fine. It's not for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Yeah, you're right. She's right. As soon
Yeah.
as it leaves your hands, it becomes other people's.
Yeah.
I was on Twitter once, and I won't say what author, but there was an author, and absolutely loved this author, and they turned out to be kind of a jerk. And so
Oh.
I know, it was so sad to see that, but they were upset because people were reading things into their book that they hadn't written. They needed to understand that everybody brings their own perspective. They bring their own life experiences, they bring their own hopes and desires to the story, and they fill in the blanks and they
Yes.
make it their own. Like that
Yes.
lady did with the abusive husband.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes their story. And I think that's wonderful that you can put
Mhm.
something out in the world that just resonates and becomes part of someone else's experience.
Yeah, I mean, and isn't that the hope? Like, you always infuse yourself into the journey of, especially a fiction writer, fiction character. When people read the book, they, I want them to experience it as Anna, right? And so she's going through this journey, but you're hoping that the readers, that you've drawn them in enough to where they feel like they are experiencing this. So of course they're bringing their own narrative to the situation, and so however they feel about it is out of my hands. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Becomes theirs. Becomes
yeah,
theirs.
for sure.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of little things sprinkled throughout the book.
Yeah.
And it made me think of my own. I have this character has her brother has he's famous, and there's this website that was created of people that dislike her because she keeps them away from her brother.
Oh.
She's his personal assistant.
Hmm.
So they have this website they've created, and it's actually a real website, which I probably shouldn't have said. So but anyway, so if anybody reading the books goes, they can, if they take the time, they can go and find that website. Do you
Mhm.
have anything sprinkled throughout for your super fans to find?
Yeah, some of the places, um, like in England, because they go into England, so some of those places are actual places. One of my dearest friends that I worked with in Europe in the international school, she is from beautiful little town in England. And so most of that setting, like, you can go and visit the castle that I reference, or yeah, I think it's castle, a manor, whatever, I guess it is.
Big house that rich people
Yes,
live
the
in.
big house that rich people live in Old England. Yes, those places. So definitely. And then there's, the typical characters that we base, our characters on, the people in life that we have. But there were two that I did not change the names on. So they know who they are. They can see who they are in the story.
Nice. So everyone who's ever known you will now be reading the book and looking for themselves. But I
Yes.
think that people that we know always think that they're the characters, especially the hero in the book. And so a lot of times you have to kind of say, well, I drew upon many people, wink, wink, and yet it could have been you, but it really
Yeah.
isn't.
Yes. Yeah.
And it makes them happy because they think that they're in your book too.
Yeah. Or it makes him sad. And my husband, because the first person, of course, I gave it to was my husband to read. And he's like, I die, you kill me. And I'm like, whoa, keep reading, but you're not David and I'm not Anna. It's like, not a thing.
It's
So,
fiction. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fiction. That's, it is funny because even my son told me, he's like, I have a really hard time reading it, Mom, because I know that's like some of the circumstances you based some of the stuff on. And so it's just weird. Because, I do, like I said, I infuse my own story like into the emotions, and most of it is just like emotion and not actual circumstances, but
Yeah, 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 yeah. My husband always says, if I didn't know him, I wouldn't be a writer because I wouldn't have anything to write about. Because I take a lot of the situations that happen in my books from things that he's experienced or that we've experienced with friends of his, that kind of thing. He was a flyer and all over the world, and so
Oh, okay.
And I've got this great collection of postcards while I was
Oh,
sitting at
nice.
home waiting. And yeah, this COVID year was supposed to be the year that we finally traveled, and I got to go to all these places that he went to. And we had
Oh,
we had just gotten our passports renewed, and we were going to go on a cruise March 28th of last year.
oh my
I
word.
know.
That's
I'm
crazy.
really happy it wasn't a month earlier, because we could have been stuck at sea. We could have gotten sick, all kinds
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think they locked everything down. I think my mother's nursing home was locked down like the 16th of March or the
Yeah.
13th, something like that. And
Hmm.
then the cruise was canceled like that week, maybe. And yeah, it's been, what month is it?
I know. Or
uh,
April. Tomorrow is May, right?
Tomorrow's May. Holy cow. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So hopefully this thing is over soon. I had a friend who just posted on Facebook that they are going to 20 books to 50K. And if you are not a writer, this is a conference that happens every year in Las Vegas. Might not always be Las Vegas. I was thinking that they were in Europe at one point,
Mm.
but I think a couple of years ago they were in Vegas, and they are again this year. And they have a couple thousand writers that get together, all indie writers. It's all indie things, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
really cool. And they come from the idea that if you have 20 books out, you can make 50,000 a year if you have, good covers and well-written books and
Oh,
good
nice.
good blurbs, and you do some
Sure.
advertising kind of thing. It's not just going to be 20 crappy books. You got to
Oh,
have some, you got to put
right.
some work into it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah. And so I thought that would be super fun. And I love Las Vegas. So was there something like that that you either spent money on or thought about spending money on that would advance your career?
Yes, always. So I actually invested in a program where I had coaching and like really dove into it. Like I said, I had no experience in the professional, world of writing. And so I, hired a coach, and I had like 18 months, my first one. And then there was another program that I bought, and ended up buying, hiring that coach. And I've gone to conferences, like you said. Not that one. That one sounds really cool. I've been part of the Missouri Writers Guild. That's where I live, in the state of Missouri. And so just things like that, always constantly trying to invest in the craft. I felt like, I needed another 4-year education to figure out how this all works,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. The days of just putting your book out there and you're not doing anything else are long over. And
Yeah.
anybody, I used to be a literary agent, and anybody who
Okay.
thinks that you can just hand your book over to an I know people that will say, I just want to get an agent and I don't want to worry about marketing or anything. Guess what? You give your book and the agent, they sell it. You're still going to have to do all your own marketing. And it's always been like that. The
Yeah.
only people who will ever get the marketing done for them are the Stephen Kings of the world, the
Yeah.
people who are already selling well. An unproven writer is going to get a couple weeks in a bookstore, and they're going to send back the books. And you're not going to get a second book or a third book unless you really put a lot into it. So why give all your money to a publishing house?
Yeah.
Why not just, you got to do the marketing anyway. Learn to do it yourself, get all the money yourself.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I put like a book proposal together for my memoir that I'm working on, and my coach was like, um, because that my thinking was like, okay, I've done this self-publishing. What if I like just get a book deal and get an advance, and then like worry about all that other stuff? Like I can just write. I can like be paid to write and not do the other work that I'm doing to get that book done. And he's like, you really have to have a marketing plan if you're going to turn in this book proposal to anybody. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll just do all the marketing and self-publish again. It's just that one of those things, like you got to do it. It is our job to represent ourselves. And I mean, it's a good thing. I remember working for, a corporation that I had I had a direct report, and they had the meeting with the higher ups and stuff. And I felt like if I could just one time represent myself, I think this would go better. It was a frustrating work environment. So, you have to kind of like take it how it comes. You can represent yourself, and that means a lot of work. Just do it well, show up, and, sell your story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, most definitely. You have to. So do you have, which leads me into, do you have a website?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I do. Yes. So I have an author website. It's just my name, shellysnowpordea.com. But I also, so through my coaching, I've actually learned so much about the industry. And so I actually now help writers or, new authors, entrepreneurs, um, do the whole self-publishing thing. So I'm a story coach, and that's with my company, The Creative You. So I
Oh,
have another
nice.
website. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
But
Well,
my author site will take you, like, if you just click on the services, whatever, it takes you to my other
oh,
site.
great. So I'll have links in the show notes for
Perfect.
anybody interested if you're an author out there and need some help getting things rolling. And yeah, Shelley's right. You really have to have a plan, a battle plan,
Mm,
and you can't just sit back and wait for people to discover you. You can have a great book and no one will know about it if you don't tell them.
yes. Yes. Sometimes we forget that we're in the age of information. And so, like, your little thing that you throw out into the world, which is amazing, it's the first step. Of course, you should do it, but it's going to get lost amongst the data that is floating around in, the ether.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to say there's like 6 or 7 million books already published on Amazon, and they publish, I forget how many every day. And because of the pandemic, everybody was locked inside their house, and the number of authors went way up.
Also, do you remember when Amazon was just for buying books? Like,
That's how they started. They were a book
that was
company.
the thing. Yeah, that was the thing. And so, yeah, it's a great, great tool for us authors, but it's like the most competitive space that you can be in.
Mhm.
And so, like you said, the marketing, and even, like, I write for other people now to pay bills, right? And so I help people write and stuff, which is, my main source of income. But sure, I would love for, my writing to support itself. I don't know that I'll ever be on the level of Stephen King or J.K. Rowling's, and that's okay. I know that I have a tool that I can utilize to work and continue to work. And that was really my goal. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen the new Amazon has a new feature? I think it's called Vella, Vella,
I
and it is
did.
like Wattpad.
Yes. I haven't looked in. I mean, I got the email and I started to read a little bit of it, and I was like, I have to actually dedicate some time for that. So I didn't look into it further.
Yeah, for anybody out there who likes serialized things, it's like Wattpad or there's another Radish.
Yeah. So it's like they have them in little novellas, right?
Yeah, you do
Yeah.
chapters, and then people buy tokens, and then they pay 1 token for every 100 words, I believe it is,
Oh,
and it has to be between, I think, 600 and 5,000 words for every chapter.
oh wow.
So, I can see some people who are fast writers, publishing a chapter a day
Wow.
kind of thing. And I'm thinking, oh, there's just no way I can write that fast.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I'm not a fast writer either. I definitely ruminate on the story and write and rewrite and write and rewrite. So, I mean, I got lots on. I published 3 books in 3 years, so it's not like, you know, I
Eh,
I don't do it, but I
Yeah.
can't do it like that.
Yeah. You do what works for you. Every writer
Yeah,
is different. Every
yeah.
writer is different. Some people, like I said, I've got a friend, I'm co-authoring a series, paranormal series with him, and he is currently writing space opera. I'm going to have him on the show when his first book comes out like next week. It's really good.
Oh
And he
wow.
writes like, sometimes he'll write like 5,000 words in a 2 hour session. Just want to reach the screen and smack him.
What?
Yeah, he's crazy.
That's
He
amazing.
wrote like, I think we started, we have a Zoom group that I write with in the afternoons, and I invited him on. He wrote like a 240,000 word book in just a few months.
Wow, that's
Like, cow.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. But does his
Yeah.
editor make him, like, pare it down? My editor would
Yeah.
be
Oh,
like,
I think he split it
"Whoa."
into three. So I remember as a kid reading, and I can't remember what the name of the book was. There was a book I read, in maybe 6th grade, and there was a scene where they talked about the windshield wipers going back and forth in this car during the rain, and I just thought the way it was written was absolutely amazing, and after reading that, it really made me wanna be a writer.
Mm,
And I for years, oh, it took me a long time to actually get to that point, but I still remember how I felt when I read that description of the rain hitting the windshield and the windshield wipers going and the 2
mhm.
people in the car having some sort of an argument. Is there something that has stayed with you novel-wise that inspired you toward the path that you've eventually taken?
Yeah. Wow, that's a great question. I was trying to think as you were talking, like, do I have that one scene in my head that I can't remember a time when I wasn't trying to read. um, I was as soon as I could read, I was trying to read everything. And because we were very sheltered. The only thing that was allowed in our home, which was an exception to the rule because my parents really liked literature and studying and things. So most of the kids would not have access to the same books I had access to. But we had classic literature. And so the things that I remember reading were things like Algonquin. And I mean, like from, first grade, kindergarten, first grade, I would read these. And then even Jane Austen's works, the Bronte sisters, which I mean, it's so funny because when you actually read them, you're like, I, why were these stories allowed? Because they're really like a little racy for what we're being taught in school and church. So, but yeah, I was always so drawn and in love with books because I was able to kind of put myself outside of the, very small world that I was in.
Oh, well, thank goodness for the books.
Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah. Most definitely. Well, it's something I think all the time. Thank goodness for books. I mean, if we didn't
Yeah.
have that way to experience a different alternate reality, a
Yeah.
different place, a different time, they open your eyes to so much about the world that you wouldn't see if you didn't crack that cover. Places,
Yes.
especially for I really like historical fiction, and
Yes.
I know sometimes it isn't really historical.
Yeah.
Sometimes liberties are taken, but it
Sure.
still opens your eyes to a time period. And I have found myself going on Google and looking up things that I've read in historical fiction and go, oh, did that really happen? Or I want to read more
Yeah.
about that.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's brought more of the world to me, I think.
So true. There's an author, and I can't remember who's credited with the statement, but they say that fiction are the lies through which we tell the truth. And I think
I like
that's
that.
beautiful. That sums it up perfectly, right? Yeah.
It
It
definitely
might be
does.
Stephen King. I'd have to look it up, but yeah, not
Yeah, I
sure.
don't know. That does sound familiar, but I don't know who said it. So if you know who
Yeah.
said it,
Yeah, let us
leave a
know.
comment. And we'll have looked it up by then. Um,
Sure.
but so tell everybody really quick how they can find you and run down what your writing service is one more time.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so you can find me, like I said, on my author website. It's just Shelly Snow Pordea, my name.com. And then if you're looking for writing services, that is the creative you. So you take off the E off the word creative and you just replace it with the letter U because that website was a lot cheaper than spelling all the words out. And so that's where I do all of my other stuff. So I do ghostwriting, story coaching. Yeah, I work with a handful of different clients who need help either publishing. I'm hoping that's where I will actually, I hope to have it done by the end of the summer. I'll launch a course that is going to be affordable, a lot more affordable than I paid for my original stuff, to kind of like help people just get through the self-publishing process. If you're a self-starter, it'll be perfect for you, just step by step how to get your work out into the world. So I'll be publishing that there, which will hopefully allow more people to kind of like get in touch with me, and I won't have to, like, I have to now say no to clients right now because I've got projects on the table where I have to get, certain clients through to their publishing date. And so my hands are tied with some of this. So that's why I was inspired to be like, okay, I need to make something that is, it's kind of, it lives online, it's evergreen, and you can access the knowledge that I have without me holding your hand, basically.
That's a
Yeah.
great idea.
Yeah.
And do you have a mailing list? You said you had a mailing list, and they can sign up from there, and then they can
Yep.
find out more about
Absolutely.
the course
Hmm.
if they want to sign up
Yeah.
now, but the course doesn't come out till June or July.
Yes, correct. It'll probably be more like August that it'll
Oh,
come
okay.
out. No,
Oops, I've got you moving up your
it's okay.
timetable.
That's okay.
Okay, so you can go to Shelly's website. I will have links in the show notes. I want to thank you for coming on today. And if anybody has any comments or questions, please drop down to the show notes. And you'll also find me on Instagram, books_cubed. You might not need the underscore. We'll see. You can try it both ways, but you can find me there. And I want to thank you, Shelly, for coming on today.
Oh, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure.